Hello, and welcome back to Ultimate Admiral Dreadnoughts. So, sadly no campaign video today, because, well, I was about to fight that new British battleship we encountered, and then, because, well, I didn't have any active naval invasions, I got a peace treaty instead. So I've been just playing through the turns, waiting for another war to happen. So that's basically it. Nothing interesting is happening in the campaign currently, but I will be back with you once it happens. So let's do another batch of some share designs. Now, I did get a, and this is not just going to be me designing ships for the AI to use. We're going to talk a little bit about ship design, because I got a very nice comment on one of my recent videos. Let's see here. Yeah, from the Greedy King, who's been silently watching and subscribed when he found this playthrough. And he would like a possible guide or some in-depth explanation of the reasons behind why I upgrade to some new things, or why I use certain guns and so forth. So we're gonna do this, and at the same time design some ships for the AI to use and talk about that. So let's start with a battleship, shall we? Let's see, I'm gonna try and make it a little bit bigger. What is the max size? And the reason for making it bigger is, well, evidently it gets bigger. So, some things to look at here. Max optimal speed is 32 knots. You can usually go a little bit faster than the max optimal speed, but if you go too fast, you will see at a certain point the weight and cost just goes straight to the moon. So there's a soft cap on speed in the game. I'm gonna set quarters to standard. You can also set them to spacious. That just means you get more crew on the ship. It lessens the chance of the ship surrendering from crew losses. But it consumes more crew from your crew pool, which, as a player, I typically don't have a problem with that. The AI tends to get itself, if they're losing a lot of ships, you often see them with a crew pool just scraping the barrel, and they have a lot of ships that are in construction but can't be launched because they don't get crew for them. So for AI ships, I like to keep it standard. Training, that is of course relevant for custom battles. In the campaign, your training is dependent on your crew training budget and also the actual combat experience of the ship. In custom battles, better crew training just makes your ship better in every way. It does cost money, but that usually doesn't matter in custom battles. I'm just gonna keep it at 0 for this share design. Actually, no, let's just set it to trained. It doesn't matter, but in case someone wants to use this for a custom battle, it's at least not terrible at everything. Range. The range slider here basically sets how much fuel your ship is carrying, which modifies the operational range. But there are a lot of other things that go into the operational range, not just the slider. So depending on engine and fuel and funnels, you can increase or decrease the range. Again, more fuel carried means more weight. That is good for now. Bulkheads, typically keep it at maximum unless I'm designing a light cruiser or DD or something, and I think it would just feel wrong to have it super tanky. If you have bulkhead set to minimum, ship gets cheaper, lighter, but you typically take a lot more damage. So, with that said, let's start actually building the ship. And of course, yeah, beam and draft. Less beam makes the ship more narrow. It's gonna make it easier to make it faster because there's less drag, but it also makes it less stable. You can make the ship really fat, and that makes it more stable, and well, it increases the displacement. But your engine also has to be a lot more powerful and a lot heavier to drive this ship at the same speed that you've set. Let's keep it at default for now. Draft. Similarly, you can lower it. You see the ship becomes like really skinny and thin. That will drop your range. It will also drop your your ship becomes smaller, basically. Conversely, you can make it taller. That increases your range, but you get a taller ship. It's less stable because your guns are mounted higher up from the waterline. And it also makes your ship bigger and more expensive. I typically keep this at 0, but if you want to build a really budget-friendly ship, you can play around with the draft. Okay, so that's the sliders. Let's take a look at towers. Basically, the better or more advanced tower, the better. There's differences in weight and cost. This is 9 million and 1,030 tons. This is 12.5 million and 1,500 tons. So it's a little bit heavier, but... and by the way, just to make it clear, I am playing with the Naval Arms Race mod, which is a little bit different from the base game, or vanilla, if you want to call it that. But I will try to talk about the differences when they are relevant. One such difference is the night vision stat, which basically if you get a battle and it's night, your view range is a lot less than it would usually be, and the night vision stat modifies that. You can see the green numbers on this advanced tower 4 are a lot higher than the green numbers on advanced tower 1. This is a less target signature, plus 35 versus plus 41. It's typically not a big deal. Let's plop that down, and again, let's go for the nicest, biggest rear tower. Now, if you're having a lot of space constraints on your ship, there are typically some rear towers that take up a lot less space. This can be useful if you want to have a smaller citadel. We're going to talk about that. Typically don't tend to minimize my citadel too much. So that's that plopped down. Now, before we deal with funnels, let's choose our fuel and engines. The better fuels, coal is already obsolete. So coal has 0% oil fuel in the campaign. Some regions give you oil, some don't. So that's something to keep in mind. Semi-oil is 50-50, and of course oil is oil. the better oil fuels or burners. I guess the actual oil is probably the same. It's a difference in the burners. Give you more funnel capacity, less engine vibrations, more fuel efficiency. Basically translating into better range and other bonuses. Now let's see what happens to the range when I add some funnels. What are the biggest funnels? Now my engine efficiency is 54.7%. Still running the basic turbines. Another funnel are at 109. So almost 19,000 kilometer range. 25,000 kilometer range. So quite an increase. Can I fit another funnel on this? Let's take a look at funnel capacities, by the way. 72.5, 70, 69, 68, 60, 57. So sometimes you want to see if it's possible to fit 2 funnels. See there? It fits 2 of the smallest funnels. So that's 57 plus 57. It's 114. Which is more than 72.5. But... And you can see the range has increased now to almost 30,000 kilometers. That looks kind of silly with one funnel being taller than the others. So let's not go with that one. Let's go with one of those. And try and find one that is more or less the same height. Can't really find it because the rear tower is a little bit shorter than the fore tower, so that's okay. We can live with this. Now, boilers, I tend to stay with natural boilers because they don't add any more weight. You get minus 40% funnel cost, minus 25% engine cost per weight, plus 10% fuel efficiency, plus minus 10 fuel storage, and minus 25 fuel cost. But if, for example, I could only fit 1 funnel on this ship without it looking silly, or if there was just not space for more than 1, I could see balanced boilers. It gives me plus 35% funnel capacity, minus 15 smoke interference, which is good. But it also adds funnel weight, funnel cost, hull weight, engine cost, engine vibration, boiler weight, maintenance cost. Same with induced and forced. Forced gives you the most funnel capacity, but it also gives you a lot of bad stuff. Sometimes you can use this if you need to. For example, now with forced, you get 30,000 kilometer range, almost. Back to natural, it drops because my funnel capacity is less. Well, let's take a look at engines. So, we're building in 1935 ships, basic steam, triple expansion, multiple expansion 1 and 2, all obsolete. The cheapest one is steam turbines. They're okay. I can upgrade that to geared turbines, and you will see my funnel capacity or engine efficiency increased, because this adds plus 50% funnel capacity versus this only adding plus 45%. And this has 100 horsepower per engine ton. This is 70. So now my ship weighs almost 33,000 tons. This is quite basic for some of you who played a long time, but I figured, you know, why not make it basic? I can save some weight, or I can go up to geared turbine 2, save even more weight. So from geared turbine 2, Turbine 1, we're saving 3,000 tons by upgrading the engine. But the ship is now more expensive, 690 million, and a maintenance cost of 26.7 a month, which is important in the campaign, versus turbine 589 million, 100 million cheaper, and quite a bit cheaper per month. Now let's look at turbo electric. This makes the ship as heavy as the normal turbine, and it makes the ship a lot more expensive at 1 billion. But maintenance 24.6 versus gear turbine 2 26.7. Because at least in Naval Arms Race, I don't think this is in the base game, turbo electric drive gives you minus 20% maintenance cost, while Gear Turbines 2 gives you plus 5% maintenance cost. Gear Turbine 1 plus 15% maintenance cost. Also, look at all the other green numbers you get. Plus 65 funnel capacity, minus 60 engine vibration, because a gear turbo electric is basically just a turbine running a generator, and you have electric motors driving your ship along. So you get a hybrid ship basically, and yeah, a lot of nice bonuses. So turbo electric has its uses. I've recently become quite a fan of this, just because my main objection to it has been that it makes your ship stupidly expensive. But in the campaign, I would rather have a ship that is more expensive to build but cheaper to keep in service than a ship that is a little bit cheaper to build but drains a ton of money every month it is in service. So that's a point for turbo electric drive. Also, it gives you very good range compared to Gear Turbines 2. In fact, here you can drop it down to 27.6. Gear Turbines 2. See, 26,000 kilometers. I can drop it down, save a little bit of weight, although my ship is still more heavy than with Gear Turbines 2, and still have more actual range, even though I dropped the slider down a notch. And again, you can also mess with the boilers. Balanced boilers give you even more range at the cost of some weight and more maintenance. Or you can just drop the boilers altogether and go with a diesel engine. It's quite a bit cheaper than a turbo electric drive. It gives you minus 25% maintenance cost, so the ship is now only 16.5 million a month to keep in service. It gives you a lot of range. It drops your weight and gives you a lot of good stuff basically. Not as many bonuses as you get with the turbo electric, but still quite a few bonuses, especially compared to turbines. So we're gonna go with diesel for this. Now let's with that finally out of the way, we're gonna take a look at guns. Let's start with the big barbette. Might drop it down a size depending on the size of the turrets. I found that it doesn't really matter that much in game which barbette you use, if you use the big barbette or the for example this one, which is smaller and lighter. A lot of the turrets that fit on this will also fit on this. It's just gonna look silly with the huge turret overhanging the tiny barbette, but it's not gonna make a big difference in game. So if you want to save some weight, and don't care about how your ship looks, just grab one that fits. I tend to care about how my ships look though. Let's take a look at centerline guns. What do we have available? Mark IV, even the 14s, even the 16s are Mark IV now in 1935. Mark III, Mark III. Are we gonna go with 16 or 15 or just go with 14? Now, obviously, the bigger the gun, the bigger the gun. If it's bigger, it's bigger, right? That's simple enough. But then you have Mark, the version of the gun, which is also quite important. For example, you can compare the Mark IV 16, which is the biggest we have available for Mark IV, versus the Mark III 17. Obviously, the 17 being bigger does more damage. 4,300 AP, 7,000 HE, versus 3.6 AP and 5.9 HE. But from 13 to 14 to 15 to 16, you see penetration and range going up as you go up in size. But then when you go to 17, even though you've gone up an inch in barrel diameter, you get a lot of numbers that drop because you've gone down a mark. So I would rather have a slightly smaller gun of Mark IV than a 17 Mark III. Of course, the Mark V would be the biggest one. They go from Mark I to Mark V. So I think we're gonna go with 16 Mark IV. Now in the campaign, there's something to keep in mind. If you build a ship with, for example, Mark II 16-inch guns, the turrets are probably not gonna look like that. They will probably be smaller and sleeker. So if you're building on a ship that has built-in barbettes, on, for example, the barbette is part of the main tower, you can suddenly find that when you go to refit your ship to mount, for example, the Mark IV guns, they no longer fit because the turret is physically bigger. That's something to keep in mind. Now, as for single, I typically never go with singles unless that's the only option. I like doubles. I think it looks nice. The weight per gun barrel will be pretty much the same. But obviously, if you want 8 guns with 2 quad turrets, that's gonna take up a lot less deck space than 8 guns in 4 twin turrets. So that's also something to keep in mind. Triples are nice, especially later on in the campaign where you get technologies that reduce the accuracy negative modifier from triple turrets. But I still like to stay with the doubles, unless I was running out of space on this hull and I would go with 3 triples instead of 4 doubles. That would actually get me an additional gun barrel, 9 instead of 8. But I think this is a good balance. Also, it looks good. Now, let's talk about the Citadel. What you can see here, the orange part of this ship section, it covers almost the entire ship. That can be a good thing or a bad thing. If I were to, for example, go with a tiny secondary tower, and let's pretend I had triple turrets now, and I lay out kind of like this, my Citadel is a lot smaller, and that makes my ship a lot lighter. So I can put a lot more armor on the citadel covered by the main belt and the inner citadel layers, and still not be overweight than if I lay my ship out like this, like I had it. So some people like to do that. It is kind of a matter of taste. Let's see, does it fit? Didn't it just fit? There we go, it fits. But yeah, let's build the rest of the ship. Auxiliary engines. They add, well, ship repairs, rudder shift speed, turret traverse, water pumping. A lot of good stuff. And the better, the better. But there is a cost associated to it. First of all, auxiliary 1 and 2, they give you minus fuel efficiency, which means less range, although not much. That's still almost 30,000 kilometers of range. Auxiliary 3 is the first one that gives you plus 5% fuel efficiency, and then these two add even more than that. So I typically like to stay with auxiliary 3. Gives you a good amount of water pumping and ship repairs and stuff like that. But take a look, if we go up to Aux 5, now our ship weighs 42,200 tons, 44,540. So it adds quite a bit of cost and weight. Same with shaft. Get a minus speed penalty plus acceleration turning rate. And some of them also give you, well, they all give you ship repairs, but some of them give you ship flaws if you go for the really advanced ones. But they also add engine weight and hull weight. So if we go with shaft 1, 42,600, 977, or shaft 4, which is the most advanced one, 43,900 and 1046. I like to stay with shaft 2. It's a little bit more expensive, a little bit heavier than shaft 1, but not really that much, and you do get some bonuses for it, especially in terms of turning rate. This gives you 10%, that's 20%. Shaft 3 gives you plus 30%, but then it kind of flattens out to 33 and 36%. I like shaft 2, that's good enough. Semi-balanced, that's the default rudder. Balanced gives you, well, makes the ship a bit lighter, less engine weight, which means also cheaper, but it gives you a minus turning rate, but you lose less speed upon turning. Unbalanced, you lose more speed on turning. It makes things heavier, more expensive, but you gain turning rate. I kind of like that on battleships. Losing speed on turning, it's not really a bad thing if you're trying to dodge torpedoes. But we're making this for the AI, so it can be bad at dodging torpedoes. It's too good as is. So now, same for steering. Obviously, the more advanced one is more advanced. Also makes your ship heavier, more expensive. I kind of like going with electric 1. Or electric 2, because they're not that heavy compared to some of the others. Let's go with electric 1. Armor. Here we have a difference from the base game, unmodded game. In vanilla, you get Krupp. You get Krupp 1, Krupp 2, Krupp 3, Krupp 4, Krupp 5. Modern armor 1 and 2. And every time you go up to a more advanced piece of armor, your ship gets more expensive, but the armor gets both stronger and lighter. In Naval Arms Race, they went with the approach that, well, your armor doesn't actually magically get lighter. It may get stronger, but it doesn't get lighter. So they just removed the entire weight modifier to the different armor types, and instead went with, for example, this is obsolete now, but it's what I'm using on my current ships in the campaign because I don't have a good upgrade for it quite yet. Basic Krupp cemented armor, plus 5% resistance, plus 170% armor cost. It's quite bad, but not terrible. Plus 80% armor strength. Well, this Class A, which is now the lowest one that is not obsolete, gives you plus 86% armor strength, which is better than Krupp cemented, but it gives you minus 10% resistance. And resistance is kind of a weird stat because I don't know exactly how it works in terms of raw numbers, but basically more resistance means you take less damage, less flooding. The flooding doesn't spread as quickly, the fires don't spread as quickly. It makes your ship more survivable, more tanky. It can soak up more hits despite being penetrated. So it's kind of an important stat. And plus 210% armor cost. It's quite expensive. And again, in the unmodded game, you just get better armor and even better armor and even better armor. So it's kind of a no-brainer, just pick the best one. Here though, next one is Japanese New Vickers non-cemented armor. It does not have a resistance modifier at all, but only gives you plus 76% armor strength. Only plus 150% armor cost though, so if we pick it, our ship gets 50 million cheaper. Let's take a look at the next one. Improved Krupp cemented, which is even more expensive than Class A, but it gives you plus 7.5% resistance, plus 89% armor strength. Or Turney cemented, plus 15% resistance, plus 87% armor strength. It's a little bit more expensive than Krupp, but not that much. We're gonna stay with improved Krupp though, because it's an AI ship, and the AI is terrible at researching things in the campaign. So it will probably not have this researched, I think. Barbette, it makes your ship less likely to explode. I typically just pick the best one. It adds weight, but it's worth it to not have your ship explode. That's that's really all there is to say about barbettes. And the way it adds weight is it modifies your main gun weight. So on a DD, you might not think barbette armor is that important because the DD is gonna die very easily anyway if hit. But on the other hand, on a DD, if you've got a handful of 5-inch guns, this is not going to add that much weight. The difference between Barbette 1 and 5 on a DD is not going to be that much. On a battleship, 44,000, 45,000, almost 500, so 1,500 tons, give or take. I think it's worth it to spend some weight on that. Anti-torp. It is what it says on the tin. It makes your ship more survivable when hit by torpedoes. It goes from 1 to 5. I typically stay with 3 because again these add hull cost and hull weight. Anti-torp 3 gives you plus 5% hull cost, plus 5% hull weight, also plus 10% ship construction time. They also add resistance though, so even if you're not facing torpedoes, Might not be a bad idea to bring some torpedo protection. Let's see what happens to our weight with torpedo protection 3, 47,500. So that's 2,000 tons, basically. With torpedo 5, 49,200. So a lot of weight. Same with the double or triple bottom. Add more resistance, less torpedo damage, flooding chance, mine hit damage. But again, more ship construction time, more hull weight. 7.5% hull weight versus 12.5. That's 50,000 tons. 49,000 tons. I typically stay with double. If there's a lot of weight available at the end of the build phase, I sometimes go back and add anti-torp 4 or 5 and triple bottom and stuff like that, but it's not a priority. Again, reinforced bulkheads, they add resistance. Basically what it is, it makes your ship more tanky. They weigh quite a bit. 10% for reinforced bulkheads too. But they also add quite a bit of survivability, so I like going with the best one here. Unless I'm really strapped for displacement. Same with anti-flood. I don't like my ships flooding to death. I pick the best one, typically. Citadel. Here we have two good options. That's basically a player's choice. Citadel 3, if I'm really struggling for weight or cost. But I typically don't pick it unless it's the best one available. 4 and 5, it's really debatable which one is the best one. 4 gives you plus 22% armor strength, plus 15% resistance. 5 only gives you plus 17.5% armor strength and 7.5% resistance. So 4 is more tanky. 6 protects your vital organs better, so to speak. Ammo detonation chance, flash fire chance, engine damage, all better with 5. 4 adds armor weight to your armor belt. 5 adds armor weight to your armor deck. So usually 5 will be lighter, but not always. I'm gonna go with 5 to begin with. Our ship is now overweight, but we're not gonna worry about that right now. That can be fixed. Ammunition. For the ships I use in the campaign, I like increased AP on the main shells. I like using AP. For AI ships, I just give them standard ratio. It's a decent balance. Not really much more to say than that. If you're gonna be building a fire spammer, you would of course go with increased HE. And what is this fire spammer? It's a ship that is using incendiary explosive shells that have improved fire chance. In vanilla, in the unmodded game, this is stupidly effective. I don't like doing it. It feels cheap and dumb, but it is effective. I'm not gonna deny it. Then you have high capacity, high explosive shells, decent fire chance, HE damage. Nose fuse. I think nose fuse and base fuse are like your two starting types of HE ammo before you research anything better. Basically, the further right you go in this selection here, the less HE damage you do, but the more penetration you have on your HE shell. And your HE shell is not going to do full damage unless it penetrates. And even a DD will have some amount of armor. I like going soft cap or cap ballistic even on battleships, because you can really slap a DD or light cruiser for a lot of damage with those kinds of shells, because you do actually penetrate them. However, if you're going to be shooting HE at heavily armored battleships that you can't penetrate even with this, then high capacity or incendiary is better. But typically for battleships, I like going with the high pen HE. Similar with the AP shells. The further right you go down in damage, up in penetration. I like going up in penetration. Let's take a look at our penetration numbers. Also, further right you get more range, further left you get less range. So that's also quite an important part of why I choose what I choose. So these guns now, with the ammunition chosen, have an AP range of 40 kilometers almost. HE range a bit shorter, but not much. At 10,000 meters, we are penetrating 21.4 inches of belt armor, and by the way, that is with 100% armor quality in penetration data, or plus 100%. In vanilla, the unmodded game, in 1930, you would typically be looking at 150% armor penetration for a kind of ballpark figure what you would expect to be up against. You can get it higher, you can get it lower, depending on what you choose for components on the ship, but 150% is a good baseline to use when calculating this. Really late game you can go even higher, maybe not 200%, but I've seen 170%. But in naval arms race, I think 100% is fine to use as a baseline penetration data thing. This ship now has plus 107%, so. But yeah, 10,000 meters, 21 inches of belt armor. At 20,000 meters, that drops down to 16.8, which is still decent. At 35,000 meters, it's only 11.6 inches of belt penetration with AP. Oh, wait. I can't actually mouse over the numbers and show you at the same time as I keep it highlighted, so sorry about that. So belt penetration goes down the further out the target is, which makes sense, given that penetration also relies on the velocity of the shell, and it loses velocity at range. But look at deck penetration with AP. At close range, like 10,000 meters, you're only going to be penetrating 1.6 inches of deck armor, because your shell will come in at a very shallow angle like this and strike the deck, and even a little bit of deck armor will go a long way. But at long range, say 35,000 meters, your shell is going to be coming in from a much steeper angle and striking the deck almost flat, like vertically, and you're then going to be penetrating up to 9.4 inches of deck armor. But we're not done there. We're going to look at propellants. Cordite 2 is the baseline. Look at all that red, plus flashfire explosion chance. What is my flashfire explosion chance right now? 43.7%, and that's with the best barbette and Citadel V and reinforced bulkheads, all of which give you minus to flashfire spreading chance and flashfire explosion chance. So we still have yeah, 43.7% flashfire chance. There's a very high likelihood of this ship exploding if penetrated in the wrong spot, and that's going to be quite sad to lose a ship worth almost 2 billion to a single hit. So let's take a look at tube powder. If I pick tube powder, my range has dropped by a lot. It's no longer almost 40 kilometers, it's only 34 kilometers. And I can no longer reach out to 35 kilometers as my max range. Actually, it could shoot even further than that, so I cannot penetrate more deck armor than 6.4 inches at my max range. Well, it goes up a little bit further than 30,000, so it might be a little bit more than 6.4, but it's still kind of bad. Because, yeah, minus gun range. You do gain penetration. You lose shell damage. You gain shell weight. But take a look at the flash fire chance. 5.8%. Let's stick with that for now. Let's take a look at bursting charge. That is the kind of explosive that is inside the shell. Dunite is the default. Plus 35% flash fire explosion chance. Picric acid, that's the one you want to use if you're gonna be trying to start fires with your incendiary HE ammo. It does give you plus 10% fire chance. See? But it's actually better than Dunite for flash fire explosion. Let's take a look at TNT 3. Minus 12.5% flash fire explosion chance. And a lot of good green numbers. Down to 2.1% chance of exploding. TNT 4, not quite so good for flash fire, but better damage. But here's my favorite. It's TNT 2. Minus 25% ammo detonation chance. Minus 25% flash fire explosion chance. Minus 5% chance of fire. So not quite as much damage as TNT 3 and 4, but your ship won't explode, so I think it's worth it. And with the reduction from TNT 2, also it's also possible to pick tube powder 2 and 3, which is very, very, very safe. 0.1 or just 0. This ship cannot explode, theoretically. But they reduce your range. Well, not really that much, because compared to 2 powder 1 you also get some other bonuses. But still, 34 kilometer range. But Cordite 3, I kinda like using it. It gives you more range. It gives you a little bit of flash fire reduction chance. Now we're up to 7.2, but that's still a lot better than almost 50% from the start. And my ship can now reach out to almost 40 kilometers. So if you can engage the enemy from afar, you also that is also kind of part of survivability, because you won't be taking as many hits in return. Also, reduced standard or increased shell ammo. It gives you more ammo, basically. Reduced can be useful if you're using really, really silly big guns. Like, for example, well, I don't have 20-inch guns here available, but if you're going to be using something with a really low rate of fire, the battle is going to be over before you've fired all your ammo anyway, and it might be worth it to save some weight and save and improve your flash fire chance even further. Let's go with standard for now. On my ships in the campaign, I like going with increased because I keep running out of ammo. Shell size. Light shells. Less flash fire chance again. It says minus 5% gun range, but you also get plus 12.5% shell muzzle velocity. So in essence, you do gain range. And while your deck penetration is actually less per range increment, because you've gained range, well, as you can see, at 40,000 meters, it now shows 10.4 inches of deck penetration. I, again, like keeping it standard. There's also the option of heavy and super heavy. Less rate of fire, more damage, more penetration. Range drops quite a bit. Damage with AP now is 1977. With super heavy, with light, it would be 1553. Let's keep it standard for now. That's pretty much what I like to use, standard. Turret traverse. I don't turn my ship around that much. Electrical 1 is the default. Electro Hydro is a simple upgrade. Electrical 2 upgrades it even further. So does Electro Hydro 3. Electrical 1, 62 410, 62 569. Let's keep it Electro Hydro. So yeah, your turrets are gonna turn faster, but it also adds weight. And I don't find turret traverse on battleships to be that crucial. On light cruisers and DDs, it definitely is important. Reloading. It makes you reload faster. It also makes everything heavier. Let's go with Auto 1. Now, it's not the best one available, but I'm not sure the AI is gonna have Auto 2 available. Although, yeah, 27.5% reload time improvement. That's quite good. With Auto 2, reload now in 30.5 seconds. With standard, it's 44.3 seconds. Auto 1, it's 34.3. But that's also changed by your crew. If you had a veteran crew and Auto 2 reloading, you would be reloading in 26.9 seconds. Even with standard, that's only 39.1 seconds. Stick with Auto 1. Rangefinders. I typically go with the best ones. You have two options: coincidence, stereoscopic. Stereoscopic is better for long range firing. Yeah, basically. This one has more base accuracy, plus 15%, plus 110% gun aiming speed versus 60% gun aiming speed and no base accuracy improvement. Exactly what the game considers long range is kind of I don't know. I tend to go with coincidence. It's a little bit lighter, it's a little bit cheaper, it's better in most cases. If you're firing at very, very long range, stereoscopic might be your best bet. But typically coincidence. Radio adds reconnaissance, which is basically only a campaign thing, and communications range. It also makes stuff more heavy and more expensive. Adds a little bit of gun aiming speed. RDF, radio direction finder. If you don't have radar researched yet, RDF is gonna give you a little green arrow pointing towards the closest unspotted ship. Getting this researched in the campaign makes such a huge difference if you are attacking convoys in like convoy battles. I like keeping it even with the radar because it does add gun aiming speed and reconnaissance and stuff. But if you're strapped for money and weight, in fact in Naval Arms Race it doesn't actually add weight to your tower, you can keep it on. It does add cost though, but not much. Radar. Such a game changer when you get it researched in the campaign, because it adds 150% tower spotting. It means you can now spot things at a distance, even if it's raining or a storm or at night. It also reduces accuracy penalties during night. Gives you more long range accuracy, more aiming speed, a lot more aiming speed. Reconnaissance, less negative impact from shell splashes. It adds quite a bit of cost though. Not that much weight. Gen 2 and Gen 3 radar, just better than Generation 1. Although the step from 1 to 2 is pretty much bigger than the step from 2 to 3. You go from 150% tower spotting to 200%, and then to 220. So I like, in the campaign, I like prioritizing rangefinders until I get Generation 1 radar, because it's such a game changer. And then maybe a bit more to get Generation 2 radar, because it's a nice improvement. And then I just get Generation 3 whenever. It's also a nice improvement, but it's in most cases not really noticeable if you have 2 or 3. Whether a Generation 3 radar ship can outspot a Generation 2 radar ship is gonna depend a lot on the basic tower spotting, which is being modified, and the actual where's that stat? There are so many stats in this game. Detectability range of the target ship. Let's go with Generation 2. And then there is Scout Plane, which is only added in Naval Arms Race. This is not in the base game. It's a little plane. It adds defense power against submarines, it adds reconnaissance, anti-submarine effectiveness, and gun aiming speed and long range accuracy. So let's drop that one on there. Let's look at turret armor. Typically when building battleships, a lot of these armor thicknesses are gonna be way more than what you need. Not all, but most of them. So this is where we're gonna shave off those 6,000 tons that we are overweight. Now, first take a look at our guns. At 20,000 meters, we can penetrate 15.8 inches of belt armor at a flat angle. Add some angling to that and it's gonna be less. So let's say 16. At longer ranges, belt armor pen is gonna drop, but deck armor pen is gonna go up. So let's say 16 inches of barbette and turret side armor. Let's say what are we gonna go for with the top armor? We're gonna go 10 inches of top armor on the turret. And you can see we've already shaved off 3,000 tons just by changing the turret armor. Let's do the same with the main belt. We're gonna go 6 on the main belt. And the main belt, as far as I know, I might be mistaken about this, covers the entire section that is also covered by the Citadel, which is from the foremost turret to the rearmost turret. This orange section here. And that is also covered by the main deck. Now you might actually need to increase the main deck a bit. Let's go with 6, although it's gonna have layers under it. Aft belt and fore belt, aft deck and fore deck. Those are the gray parts here. Some like to build a really all or nothing kind of ship where you have very minimal armor on the fore belt, aft deck, and fore deck, because there's nothing really important behind there anyway. Your gun magazines and barbettes are behind the main belt and main deck, as is your engine room. But these parts here still get flooded. I like to keep some amount of armor on them, so that you don't get just flooded out by DDs or something firing 5-inch guns at you. Superstructure, like to keep at least 2 inches of armor. Again, so you don't just take a lot of damage from smaller guns and high explosives. I like keeping the conning tower at the same thickness as the main belt and turret armor. But yeah, I know in real life there was an argument to be made for not having any conning tower armor because well, the force of a main battery shell impacting on the conning tower would liquidate the people inside it anyway. So it would be better to just give it the chance to pass clean through. But in the game, I like having some conning tower armor. It doesn't make a huge difference in terms of weight. Or does it? It makes a decent difference. Let's keep it at 14 then. Some protection is nice. Now, Citadel belts. Behind the main belt there is an extra protective steel layer which reduces the destructive power of a penetrating shell. If no armor is used, then there is still some protection offered according to the Citadel type. So here at least 50% of the shell penetrating power is lost before hitting this layer. So if a shell goes through the main belt, it has lost quite a lot of power before penetrating the Citadel belt. So let's turn it down. And you can see our ship is no longer overweight. We've slimmed down quite a bit. Now we're gonna add some of that weight to the main belt, main deck. Maybe stick with 2, 1. And with each layer of Citadel that a shell passes through, it's going to lose more penetrating power. So the maximum amount of armor you can put on each of these belts is also less. I can't have more on the second inner belt than on the first inner belt. For example, I can't put 6 inches here. It's going to max out at 3.2. Let's go 3. Alright, so that is the basic ship laid out. If I needed to save more weight, I could reduce my speed. 30 knots, it saves quite a bit of weight. It saves money too. I can also drop the range because I'm running a diesel engine. I've got oil 3, got 2 big funnels. This range is pretty good. Even if I drop it down, even at the minimum here, that's okay range actually. Let's keep it at 28,000 actually. Let's keep it at 34,000 and see what we need weight for when adding secondary guns. First, we have a tiny bit of an aft weight offset. 0.1%. It is basically nothing. You can safely ignore that number. But I like to keep it there. No weight offset. It's probably going to be a bit of a weight offset now that we are done with secondaries. So secondaries in this game, they are a different armor group. They can target other ships than your main guns. So if your main guns are firing at a battleship, you can, I think it's the Alt key. If you hit Alt and then select another target, that's going to be a target for your secondary guns. So your main guns can be engaging a battleship at 30-kilometer range. Your secondary guns can be blasting away at a squadron of destroyers that are closing in. And they will typically do that automatically, even if you don't micromanage the targeting. So with that in mind, 8-inch guns, biggest ones available as secondaries. They're huge. There's no space to put them on this ship unless I make space for them, but I don't want to do that. Same with 7-inch guns. 6-inch guns, got a choice of single, double, triple, quadruple. These are gonna fit here, but they're quite heavy. There. 8 6-inch guns per side. That's basically 2 light cruisers, one strapped to either side of your battleship. That is a bit excessive though. But, you know, that's a... you get guns pumping out fires to 20-kilometer range. That's not a bad thing. Realistically, you would be looking at something like double 5-inch guns, which is still not bad. Let's see, can we add some more of these? Or, yeah, there fit one there. There fit one here. Could of course go with quadruples instead of doubles. They also fit. You get twice the number of guns. They weigh more. A little bit. Well, twice as much basically. But yeah. I like keeping it looking good. The side of the turret is kind of overhanging the side of the ship. But the turret ring itself is just inside, so we're gonna say it's okay. It's also possible to actually move them up here. They're not going to be blocking the A turret because it has a limited arc of fire anyway. And the B turret isn't a barbette, so you can mount them here. And here, further inboard. Actually going to give you a slightly better arc of fire for the secondaries. Let's see if I can straighten out that. I have to wait to offset. There we go. Looks a little bit better. Now, 3-inch guns. We can go triples with these. They fit here, here, here. They don't actually fit there. And you can put them a couple of other places. Let's go down to 2-inch guns. We're going to modify these to be 1.6-inch, which is 40 millimeters, because they look like Bofors guns. These can actually be mounted on top of your main gun turrets. And I think it kind of looks good like that. Now these quad guns can also be mounted on a lot of other places where it doesn't look like they can actually fit, so I'm not gonna, in interest of making my ship look good. Which is how important that is entirely up to you. So I'm gonna stick these doubles here instead. Of course, there are no even with the spotting planes in Naval Arms Race, there are no actual airplanes in this game. The spotting planes are just an item that improves some of your statistics. So you don't need anti-aircraft guns, but we can pretend they are anti-aircraft guns. So we're going to turn the 2-inch guns down to 1.6. So they can be our little Bofors. Now we have an aft weight offset again. So we're gonna try and move things a little bit further forward. Now let's see how much actually moves when I move this tower. Am I gonna have a lot of problems? Yeah, a little bit, because I placed those turrets here. Again, 0.2% afloat offset, not a huge deal. But if it can be improved. And also, one of the most effective ways of reducing afloat offset is to move your funnel. So here it's 0.2%, here is 0.1%. Can this be... it can be moved a little bit. But I think it's quite good now. We can try and move this turret forward a little bit. There we go. And this has to be replaced because it doesn't follow the main gun turret. There. We still have a 0.1% afloat offset. I'm gonna ignore it. We have some weight left over though. What to use it for? We can go with anti-torp 4. A little bit of an improvement. I want to add some barbette armor to the 5-inch guns. 1.8 is the maximum. 2 inches of top armor should be enough. That's the same as the aft and foredeck. That's the maximum. Side armor 3.8 is the maximum. I can also make the guns longer. These are 45 caliber length to begin with. So caliber length is, well, this is a 16-inch gun. So it is 45 calibers in length. So 45 times 16 is the length of the barrel. You can increase that to, let's see, let's make it a 50 caliber. There you go, plus 11%. That's 50 times 16. That improves your range. It worsens your reload time. But it also improves penetration, although not deck penetration. Other than purely from the fact that you can now fire further out. Deck pen at 35,000 meters now is 6.6. If we turn them back at 35,000 meters, 8.8. Because again, longer barrels, more muzzle velocity, flatter trajectory of the shell. It's going to be coming in at a flatter angle and not be as good at penetrating deck armor. I'm going to go back down to anti-torp 3 actually, and spend some of that weight on armor. I want to up my turret armor to 17 inches. That should keep me safe at, you know, 15,000 meters is where these guns can begin to penetrate that kind of armor. Also, regarding lengthening gun barrels, if I can't get anything better than Mark 3 or 2, I will often lengthen the gun barrels to give me more range and accuracy. Although the accuracy increase since patch 1.4 has been reduced, you get a negative base modifier actually to accuracy, but accuracy is based on your max range. So if this has a max range of what is the biggest longest barrel I can get? 54 caliber, max range of 48.2 kilometer, almost 50. At 20,000 meters now, 4.9% accuracy with AP. 20,000 meters, 4.3%. So even though lengthening the barrels made my base accuracy worse, it doesn't really say here anywhere, but yeah, according to patch notes, that's what it does. The by range increment accuracy will be better, but not by a huge amount. But by the time you get Mark IV, and especially Mark V guns, you're going to be firing at such long ranges anyway, and with very decent accuracy, it's worth keeping the barrels shorter to improve rate of fire and improve deck penetration, I think. So I just keep them baseline. Let's take another look at armor. It can go up to 11 on the turret top. Can we go to 7 on the main deck? Yes, we can. Can we up the conning tower armor again? Yes, we can. Some guns have poor sector of fire. The game will often say that without telling you which guns. And by the way, this is just the green circle clipping through the deck. It can actually fire forwards, it just looks silly. So don't worry about that one. Let's see, what more can we add to this ship? It has a good amount of things. Auto 2 can be added. That improves the reload time by quite a bit. Yeah, 30 seconds. This is a decent ship now. I still want to go down to Auto 1, because if I want the AI to build this, it needs to have the relevant technologies actually unlocked, which again the AI is terrible at. Let's go to 5 inches on the first inner belt. There we go, almost at the weight limit. We're gonna save it. Hibernia SD for share design. I like to add that suffix to all my ship designs, so you can easily tell that, hey, the AI is actually building one of my ships, although they usually don't. So save. Now a quick talk. Wow, I've been talking for a long time now. Naval arms race does not make torpedo boats go obsolete, although the intent of this is that you have a very fast well, it doesn't even have to be fast, but a cheap little boat. Torpedo launcher one is needed, that you can keep with your task forces, and you can add everything like mine layers, mine sweepers, depth charges. This is really cheap. 6.6 million, 252,000 a month. We can probably make it cheaper. At this, what I do with these torpedo boats in my task forces is I keep a handful of them in each task force, and their purpose is basically, I don't even have the mine layers because I think mines are kind of lame. Yeah, they hunt submarines, they clear minefields on the campaign map. When the task force gets into a battle, I send the torpedo boats away immediately. They're not intended to fight enemy ships. They're just there to keep the task force safe on the campaign map. That's their one option, one mission. Their reason for being. In vanilla, the unmodded game, torpedo boats are obsoleted in around 1910, a little bit depending on which nation you're playing. Some have torpedo boats available a bit later than that, but mostly once you get into the Dreadnought era, you're not going to be building torpedo boats. You can kind of do the same thing if you just need something to escort your main fleet with the cheap DD, for example. So add the best acoustics, the best minesweeper, the best depth charges, and have a cheap DD that's only there to keep your task forces safe. If you're talking about combat DDs though, let's pick a bigger one. There are basically two types with some subtypes, I guess. One is the torpedo spammer, where you have quite a few torpedoes, and that is your main weapon. These are very effective up until you get into radar and good spotting ranges and stuff, because the main strength of the destroyer is that you can get quite close to an enemy ship unspotted before launching, especially early on where ships have very poor view ranges. But once the enemy gets radar and stuff, getting in close to launch torpedoes is kind of suicidal. You can remedy that with oxygen torpedoes, which have very good range. Let's see, let's make these 22-inch. Yeah, 22.7 kilometer range. So you may still launch these from outside of their effective gun range, especially if they're firing at a single destroyer that is speeding along at preferably much higher speeds than 34 knots. For DDs, I want to get as fast as I can before the weight and cost just go through the roof. But yeah, that's a long-range torpedo boat. Earlier on, when you actually can get close, I like fast torpedoes, because, well, it gives the enemy less chance to dodge. And in those cases, I get my DD as close in as I think I can without it getting blasted away. You didn't get to see this much in the current ongoing American campaign because I started in 1920. In my previous campaign, I did it quite a bit in the German campaign. Early on, got my DDs in close and just shotgunned the enemy with torpedoes. It was quite effective until technology advances made it no longer effective. But right about the same time as these close-range fast torpedo boats become ineffective, your gunboat torpedo boats start getting real good, because you get that auto reloading. See, this gun can now reload in 5.2 seconds. And in the base game you also get triple turrets. In Naval Arms Race you don't get more than double. So you can build a let's see, does this fit? It kinda does. You can build a gunboat. Add some barbettes. That doesn't fit there. That's too bad. Add some like so. And you're gonna need a funnel, of course. Preferably more funnel capacity than that, but basically this, and you stick a single or a double, maybe one triple torpedo launcher on here somewhere where it fits, because the game says you need a torpedo launcher. There we go, that gives you more space. But in this case, your main weapon is your guns. And in this case, you will be maybe increased HE, and you will be using incendiary HE shells to burn down any big ship you encounter. A squadron of these DDs, with lots of very fast firing 5-inch guns, they can burn down a battleship surprisingly quickly. And your semi-AP is actually for enemy DDs, which they can gun down also very efficiently. So it's a little bit opposite of what you've been having until then with a lot of battleships and stuff. You will now be using your HE to kill the big ships and your AP to kill the small ships instead of the other way around. So that's my basic DD gunboat philosophy. Main disadvantage of DDs: you can't put a lot of armor on them. 1.1 is the max for the main belt. They don't have a lot of base resistance, so they're gonna go down quite easily if hit. But they are small, and you can make them quite fast. That means the enemy will get the target fast speed, accuracy negative modifier, and a negative modifier for target size small. There's also the, let's see, detectability, which is quite low on DDs. They also have terrible spotting ranges, even if you add radar. This tower is not half bad actually, but especially early on, a lot of the destroyer main towers will have very poor spotting ranges, so they can't spot that far, but they can't be spotted from afar either, so it's kind of a trade-off. With radar, this would actually be not terrible at spotting. It could get close and still spot, so I think there were a couple of cases in my German campaign early on where all my ships had terrible spotting ranges because apparently German towers are just terrible in 1910. And I used destroyers as scouts. Basically, if you've played World of Tanks, imagine an ELC Even 90 driving around on Prokhorovka, spotting everything, and a lot of tanks just lining up, shooting everything that's spotted. That was basically my early game tactics. Current US campaign, again, starting year 1920, so that tactic was already obsolete. But early 1910s, it works stupidly well. Quick note about battlecruisers. I typically build them like battleships, just faster. Most of these battlecruiser hulls have very high optimal speed compared to the battleships. This one can go 39.5 knots as optimal speed. That's just ridiculous. Yeah, you can make this almost 40 knots. And you can give it reasonable armor, comparable to a battleship. Can you go 16 inch? Yeah, you can go 16 inch. Yeah. You can give this battlecruiser same amount of armor, similar guns to the Hibernia we just designed. And in fact, this is a special thing that the British get, a super battlecruisers. Not all countries get that. This one can, yeah. I think we can build this to the same specifications as this battleship, just make it stupidly fast. So that's an option. Yeah, that is an option. Engine efficiency, kind of trash though. So we're gonna have to need more funnels. I'm not gonna build the entire ship. But I want to see what kind of funnels fit here. 40,000 kilometer range, that is excessive. No, Mega Funnel 6. The biggest one I can get 2 of. And again, a bit silly with that funnel being taller than the ones behind it, but 116% engine efficiency. With diesel 2 it would be even less. And I dare say, what is the so far maintenance cost is only 11.2 million a month, which for this kind of ship is a bargain. But yeah, we're not going to build it. This has gone way longer than I expected it to. Gotta be like 1.5 hours probably. If you're still watching, thank you for watching. I hope you found it helpful. If there's anything else, just ask. I will try to answer it. But I think I got most of my preferences explained here. So yeah, if I was building this for my own campaign, I would have added more ammo. I could have gone down in range, because unlike the AI, I know not to run my ships uselessly all across the world with no purpose, just to run them out of fuel. I can actually keep them supplied. So I could sacrifice that, because this is amazing range, by the way. 34,000 meters, 34,000 kilometers. And I would try to get the maintenance cost even a little bit lower, so it wouldn't just eat up my entire naval budget sitting in port. But other than that, I would have it pretty much like this. If you're building for a custom battle where things like maintenance cost and range don't really matter, well, range still matters in custom battles, but you don't need that much. From my testing, I found that 6,000 kilometers is enough to get you to the battle with fuel remaining. You're gonna run out after not that long, but with 7,000 kilometer range, you have fuel for an hour of sailing around. At 10,000 kilometer range, I don't think I've ever run a ship out of fuel in a custom battle with that kind of range. So yeah, this will never run out of fuel in a custom battle, even with the slider set to minimum, because 23,000 kilometers is plenty. But again, the range slider is not the only thing deciding your range. That I have found. Other than that, if you're gonna be like competitively for shipyard champions or something like that, just forget all about aesthetics. If you just want to win, you can probably make a better ship than this by just not caring about how it looks. But for most of the time when designing ships for campaign use, I like to make them a little bit pretty. That's kind of what drew me to the game. You can make some really nice looking ships, and I hope you do. Goodbye, and take care.